Welcome to Mastering Life's Adventures, an educational podcast about tapping into your true self, the soul, the substance of your life, to discover what life's ups and downs are really about, and how to have a greater sense of purpose, peace, joy, and fulfillment. I am Dr. Judith Holder, your host, coach, psychologist, fellow seeker who enjoys diving into the connections between spirituality, psychology, wellness, and your everyday life's adventures. All preparing and polishing you like the facets of a magnificent diamond to be your best self. If you're craving more from your life, you are in the right place. Come, let's journey together and transforming what you know into who you really are. Mastering Life's Adventures begins now.
Hi, I'm back. I was thinking about another key that is really important, but I don't think we're looking at it in the right way. And that is acceptance, approval, validation. I have found that, be it myself or friends, family members, acquaintances, all are wanting the same thing. They're wanting to have approval, acceptance, and I think it's innately within us to be approved, liked, and appreciated and valued. And so at some level, it's a key because we have to realize approval is fine, but are we putting the emphasis in the wrong direction? We're putting the emphasis in approval of the humanness of who we are, the persona, or the ego persona, as I call it. But is that really what we should be putting our attention to, that level of approval? Yes, when we're young and developmentally, it's like for a child, you approve of them when they've had that first walk. You approve of them when they go to their first recital, be it piano or a recital for an instrument that they're playing, such as piano, but it might be a violin. And then also for the first game that they win, be it football, basketball, track and field. We have all these things that we give our approval around, which has its place. But have we ever thought about that there is a need for the soul, for you to approve of your soul, and for God to be approved of your actions, your deeds, your words, your thoughts? Are they seen in the rightful light of approval? We put so much of our attention to the external need for approval, but we don't put much of our attention to the need for our internal, the soul level approval, and the higher approval, which is our Creator, the I Am Presence, the God, the Atman. We don't even think about, are we doing actions or deeds or thoughts and feelings that are approval to God? When we think about all the thoughts that we have during a day, during a week, during several weeks, through a month, through decades, how much is those thoughts put to worthy thoughts, harmonious thoughts, thoughts of service, thoughts of helping, thoughts of kindness, thoughts of love, loving people in the midst of them maybe doing something not so great towards us? Do we put our thoughts in a way that sanctifies who we are? Because what we are trying to ultimately do is sanctify the glory of God that is within us, that spirit spark, that soul source. And knowing that the quest of the soul is to unite with the Christ principles, the Christ qualities that Jesus came to show and demonstrate. So it moves us closer to be in the rightful light and in the rightful lens of God, our Creator. There are thoughts that we need to look at and see if they're on the beam or off the beam of what God would want for us. Are they worthy thoughts? Are there thoughts that allows us to be able to think in a creative and more helpful way in the day-to-day activities we're engaged in? Or are they mean thoughts? Those thoughts that go on that we're bickering inside of ourselves or with the situation or circumstance or the person we've interacted with that makes us grumble and gets us into this awkward energy of irritability, frustration, annoyance. Think about that. Because how we think does impact how God can come into our life and guide us, help us. And we can close the door to God because we never put our attention to God and ask for Him to help us to think in a way that is holy, that is righteous, that is kind, that is in attunement with God's glory. So that's thoughts. Let's move to emotions. What do you notice going on in your day-to-day activities when you get kind of annoyed that this person said something to you that was mean-spirited, or that was making you feel like you were the blame for something that they really actually did and it was their fault? And so you get into this annoying energy. You get into this emotional turbulence. It's like on a plane when they say, buckle up because we're coming into some turbulence. The emotional turbulence that we get to has to be weighed and looked at, because where there is this emotional turbulence from an argument with a colleague or from a fight that we've had when we left in the morning feeling angry and annoyed at our spouse or a significant other, or we find that we're grumbling because we've been asked to do something and we really don't want to do it and we think it's stupid and not going to be helpful in any way. But when we do it, we realize, oh my God, that turned out entirely different. So it switches our emotions to be elated and be happy. Oh wow, that turned out great. But what happened before that? When all the emotions were turning like a tidal wave going on, and it ends up taking you away with all this negativity. And emotions are energy and motion. And where there's energy and motion that is of a turbulent type, it disconnects us from our God source. It disconnects us from our soul. It disconnects us from being in listening grace, because there's too much turbulence taking place internally with us. And sometimes that turbulence that goes on within us can last for days, weeks, months, years, decades. We have this low-grade turbulence that's happened, this irritability. People say, I don't understand it. Why are you so irritable? What's going on that you're being sarcastic or reactionary to things that you don't need to be so reactionary to? Well, there may be a reason for that. Is that we don't realize our thoughts relate to our feelings. And if it starts in our thinking realm, it travels down into our emotions, creating turbulence. So turbulence doesn't happen out of the blue. It happens because there is some connection between our thoughts and our feelings. And our feelings getting riled up. And we don't always know how to tone them down in a way that allows us to feel like we're centered, balanced, and able to see things in the rightful light. Because when we get so riled up, we have this kind of fog that can come upon us. And it can happen that so we don't even see things that we need to see in a situation because we're just so emotionally aroused from the situation or what the person said to us or the work that is being asked for us to do because of the stress that is upon us. We're finding that we're always in a point of being negative. We can see the glass in two ways. We can see something that happens to us as a glass half filled, or we can see it as half empty. Sometimes we tend to fall through seeing the glass always half empty and not see what is the gift, what is the opportunity, what is it that I'm supposed to be learning from this situation. We have to realize that our thoughts and our feelings shouldn't be the rulers of who we are if we're on a spiritual path, if we're walking a spiritual way. We have to realize that our thoughts and our feelings have to be under the auspices of the direction of our Christ. That's what Jesus came to teach us. How to gain greater mastery. How to have a degree of non-attachment to some of the things that happen in our world, as opposed to being so attached that if there's an earthquake, we're right in the middle of that earthquake. We want to rise above the earthquake We want to see it for what it is. We want to see the players who's turning the situation or creating the negative experiences. Sometimes we say that, you kind of push me into reacting this way. We have to realize we have to be the rulers of our energy and how we want to use our energy. We have to be the ones to take the step back and just say, you know what? I'm not going to go down that road of being emotionally distraught or angry or frustrated or irritable or have these ongoing thoughts or ruminations going on in our mind. And you know what happens with tornadoes? Anything that gets in its wake, it just ruins, devastates. It creates a disaster. And we don't want to have disasters in our world. We do not want to have turbulence that's so extreme that it gets us off our balance, off that beam of light, our balance beam, and wanting to stay steady and firm on that beam, because that's where we get our intuition. That's where we get our promptings. That's where we get the knowledge of what needs to happen. But if we're never on that balance beam, we can have situations and experiences circling around us, but do we have to be engaged in it? No, we do not. We can observe it. We can call upon the Lord and ask God to help us to learn how to navigate through it. We can have fiats that we make to claim the good in the situation as opposed to seeing the negative in the situation. And what I mean by a fiat, and those are short statements that we say and we call to God. For example, in the name of Almighty God, come, take dominion of this situation now. That's a fiat. We can give that. Or we can have the fiat, I shall not be moved to the situation that's happening to me, to that person who's saying something negative to me. I am not going to be moved, for I stay in the energy and frequency and vibration of God. God, what do you want me to do in this situation? For I shall not be moved. When we can have the fervor, use our emotions and use our thinking to call and toggle ourselves to God's energy and helping us moving forward, then we start making tracks. It's like a train track. When the train left the gate, building up speed. And steam, it's a rifle movement forward because you're focused, you're moving forward, and you're not getting derailed by the situation that has happened to you, by the argument that took place at work, or by your spouse forgetting your birthday or your anniversary. You're not going to be moved by those things. Yes, they're not great when they're happened to you, but you say, Lord, what do I need to do here? Instead of pouting about your significant other missing your birthday, maybe just say, today is my birthday, and I really would like to celebrate it. And not get into mind reading that the person should have known. The person should read what's on our mind. Some people, they get so busy or they're a little bit more scattered and they don't always remember dates. So there's some degree of compassion we hold, but we also ask for what we want and what we may need at the time. Honey, I really need for you to be able to fill in the blank. That would be really helpful. They have free will. They say yay or nay to that. But what you're trying to do is gain self-mastery over you and not trying to control someone else. And when we're moving into a point of wanting to control someone else because we want them to do it our way or to think our way, then that's off the path. You've just derailed your train. We have no control over that. You can ask God to take command of that person and let God's will be done in the situation that you find yourself in. There comes a point, if you're walking a spiritual path, you do your part, but then you've got to let go and let God do his part and cycle of when things need to happen. And we want acceptance and approval from the Lord. We want to be able to hear or imagine in our minds as, this is my beloved daughter, my beloved son, who I am well pleased. We want that level of approval from our source, our creator, our Atman, our I am presence. We want it from their perspective, not from this total perspective in the human creation. If that is our whole weight, in terms of 100% of our weight going to that direction, then it tilts us in the wrong direction. It's like the Libran scales. They can be balanced, or they can tip high or tip low. We want to be balanced. We want to know, yes, I would have appreciated the applause and appreciation for that speech that I gave. And some people did, some people didn't. But that's not going to move me. I'm going to say, God, what do you think? How do things go there? Be in listening grace. Because God may say, you did what you needed to do. You said what you needed to say. Be pleased. Be happy. But in order to have that listening grace, we've got to get through these thoughts, these emotions that act as barriers, that act as ways in which we are unable to get to our source. We get stuck in approval from other people, approval from family members, approval for work. When we don't get that approval, then we're sad, we're annoyed, we're frustrated. But that's not what God says is the level of approval that is really needed. The approval that is needed is first with the soul that exists within you. The soul connection, being centered. You've heard me say this before. There is some degree of silence that is needed for you to hear and understand the essence of your soul. And when we're not willing to have the silence, and we're engaged in a lot of chatter, internally, externally, from moving here, moving there, being so busy, we exhaust ourselves, then we're not walking truly the path that leads to God to be able to say, this is my son, this is my daughter, who I am well pleased. That's the approval that we want to walk down, the path you want to take. And it does require then for us to be alert to how we think, be alert to how we feel, be alert to what memories come through and out of our mind so quickly, be alert to our reactions to things. And when we can have that alertness and being able to say, is that thought a thought that is worthy, that God, if he was here, would approve of? Was that feeling acceptable in God's eyes? I'm not sure. We will know if we're walking a spiritual path and we start asking ourselves those types of questions, we will quickly know, no, that was not the vibration of the Lord. That is outside of what I know of God and who God is in my life. As I meditate, as I reflect, as I fine-tune myself. Because God is the quality of love. And there's so many different essences and vibrations, like musical instruments of an orchestra of love that we're trying to play within ourselves. We are trying to understand that love quality in the day-to-day activities that we do. How do we initiate it? How do we ask God to guide us to be more loving in that situation? Sometimes we have to be loving but firm with some individuals. Sometimes we have to have boundaries that allows a person to know when they stepped over the line and created a stress or difficulty that was not needed. Love is discipline. Love is attunement. Love is discernment, is the ability to feel the warmth of your heart and sending it out to all individuals that you come in contact with. Love is the ability to know that the essence of who you are is connected to the essence of God. And that essence allows you to know that God is your God in your life. And we become short-sighted of that because we get so much into wanting approval. But what I'm saying is what we really want is God's approval. And what we want to learn how to refine within us is those qualities of peace, harmony, joy, of being willing to be able to look at things from a different light than we looked at it before, because a person told us something about ourselves that we weren't truly aware of at the time. But when we reflect on it, you can see how that could have been, that they thought you were that way. And you make the correction. Or you ask for the person to alert you when they see it coming out in you in the future. There's this humble quality, which is a quality of love. There's this humility we have, because the ego persona wants this human approval. They'll try to get it in any way they can. And that's where we can get into manipulation and manipulating other people to give us what we want in our life. But that's false. That's not the path of God. The path of God is being able to look at each situation that happens and be aware of how you thought about it, how you reacted to it in terms of feelings, how you created this memory that keeps on revolving in your mind. You're looking at that and just say, are these the qualities or thoughts, feelings, and ruminations of what God would be doing? Look upon me in any particular way? And you may say, no, I can't do that anymore. I can't think that way that is negative, that is harmful to yourself or harmful to someone else. I can't feel that anymore, angry all the time or resentful at people or holding a grudge to someone, a situation that a person has created for you. We really have to be able to say to these types of energies, this is what God would not approve of in my life. If I know that God does not approve it in my life, why am I keep on revolving and falling into these particular patterns of thought, feelings, reactions? I can change. That's what you have to say to yourself. I can change, and I will. I can be better in how I think. Refine it. Be better in how I feel. Refine it in the ruminations that I have. Dissolve it. We have to learn to be able to do these things, but if we aren't observant of ourselves, which is the first step, then we fall back into the old way. And we do not walk the path of seeking God's approval. Because when we seek God's approval, then there's a standard of behavior. There's a standard of how we behave, how we think, how we act that is more intimate and more like the model that was given to us, Jesus. Being more, Jesus the Christ. We want to be now, name your name, the Christ. And so that was the ways in which we have been shown, and even in the book of Imitation of Christ, showing you how to emulate, to be more Christ-like, to be more engaged in a way that is kind, as I said before, but firm, discerning of knowing when you need to speak and when you need to be quiet, and being aware of the fact that we're not going to always do it right. God knows we're on the planet to have certain lessons, to have certain experiences, to gain from that. And sometimes, we won't always do it right or accurate or correct or perfectly, but that's not what God's looking at. What God looks at is the quality of our heart. The quality of our heart. What is the vibration and the quality by which you do something by? In the purity, in the pristine purity of the qualities of giving, serving, helping, surrendering, things that we need to be able to surrender to God, surrender them all up to heaven. Because when we're able to walk this path that is more in attunement to God's qualities, of how he wishes us to be as his children, then He recognizes us. We feel him. We feel the holiness. And this is the quality of God. God's quality is holiness. God's quality is goodness. God's quality is grace. And when we work on those qualities and we are being more of that, then we get into this attunement with walking the rightful way, learning the lessons we need to learn, knowing that we're going to have some ups and downs in the living of life, but we're growing, we're advancing, we're moving forward. Seek out God's approval, not this constant need to be approved by man. When we seek God's approval, it is the higher level. People will have positive things to say to us. And when they do say those things, we're grateful. We say thank you. But we don't get so caught up in the limelight. It is by God's grace that we were able to do that particular task or that particular situation that came upon us, that we were able to navigate it so smoothly because we have been working on being in listening grace. Something to think about. Bye for now.
Thank you for joining me for this episode on Mastering Life's Adventures, being your best self through soul evolution. If you have enjoyed what you've heard today, I would be delighted if you would share this episode with others, leave a thumbs up, and subscribe to my Mastering Life's Adventures podcast. Look forward to your joining the next episode. Please leave any comments or suggestions you might have below. Bye for now.